Hey everyone, this is the fourth episode of Two Nerds One Pod. My name is Jacob,
And my name is Scott.
and today we're about the 2020 election, U.S. election, I should say.
Hell yeah. So are you ready for the shitstorm that will be the 2020
Oh,
election?
great. I was thinking about potential insurrection that could follow.
I feel like it's going to be a repeat of the 2000 election over again where it's going to be challenged and have to go to the Supreme Court to be decided. What do you think?
I think if it's close, there's going to be a problem. I think someone has to win in a landslide,
Yeah.
otherwise it's going to be not good.
Should we do our predictions in the beginning or say it at the end?
Let's do our predictions at the beginning and the end, because I might
Okay.
change my mind.
Okay. Do you want to go first or shall I?
You can go ahead.
So I think there's a very likely chance that Trump will win, but I'm going to make a prediction that it is, so as we know, it's 530 electoral votes and you need 270 to win. So I predict it's going to be 296 for Biden and 242 for Trump.
Wow. Wow. Decisive, I'd say.
One time in high school, we had one of the hardest classes of my life was American politics, and it was an AP class, and the teacher was really good, and she did kind of a prediction thing, and I somehow won the exact electoral vote count, even though I just guessed two random numbers, so I got an extra credit point on my test. It was pretty
Is
cool.
that what you're doing here?
Yeah, I'm hoping some teacher somewhere will give me an extra credit point.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, hopefully that's what happens. I think it's going to be too close to call. Let's go to the Supreme Court. And I don't know if I'm just doomsaying because 2020 has been a health storm of being super cool. I'm not sure I have any hope left in me.
Here, and it's only October when we're recording this.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah, I
man.
guess we should say it's. Oh, I just think that it's going to go to the Supreme Court and be awful. Like, I don't know. I don't really have a lot of hope left for at least for the election cycle.
Right. When is the actual date of the election? I'm a little behind because I'm in a different country these days.
It is November 3rd.
November 3rd, okay.
So that's next week.
Yes, on Wednesday, the preliminary results should be in because then they usually count the absentee ballots after that, assuming they're going to be accepted.
Yeah, the other part of that is like there's a lot of them. So, like in my state, they can't count them until election day. So they're going to be counting them for a long time. At least in my state, there's two envelopes, right? So there's a security envelope, and then there's the envelope you vote in, or your ballot is in. So they
Mhm.
have to remove two envelopes that are licked closed in order to just run the ballot through a machine. So I think it's going to be yeah.
Laborious.
Yeah, and that's just my dinky little state.
Imagine if you were the person that was working there, well, all you do is open up envelopes all day for your job.
I don't know. Part of me thinks I've heard some interviews of people that do like that volunteer work. Is it sort of it's good because they sort of think about it as like they're helping democracy.
Okay, so they take pride in it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it's hell, but there's probably a bit of pride in that you're.
You're doing it for Uncle Sam.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, fair enough. I was considering that in sort of a paid job, but I think you're right. There's probably volunteers that do that. So maybe that makes
Mm-hmm.
it, the difference is that you do it once every 4 years versus every day of your life.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What is the news coverage like in Germany? Would you turn on the news and they talk about the U.S. election?
So here I might be an anomaly because I don't read any of the English version of the German news sites or the German version. I will tell you an anecdote from my colleague because she reads Die Welt or something, the world in German, and then whenever there's an article about Trump, they'll have it on a black background very often, and it will be the only article like that. So she is saying, even though I don't support this guy, you can tell there's definite media bias about.
Why is that on a black background?
They want to kind of vilify him and make him look a bit dark, and menacing. So they always
Interesting.
her theory is that subconsciously they're trying to get people to associate people with kind of a darker color as bad. Because if it's something that
Sure.
sticks out, as far as there's 10 articles and one of them has a black background, then maybe in your subconscious you think, there's something different about this picture, and you make the connection that it's a bad connection. So that's her thinking anyway. Yeah, so I don't read those news sites. I read BBC all the time. So just bbc.co.uk. I've always read that for whatever reason. I guess it's because it's got less obtrusive ads usually than other news sites. Sometimes when I go to ABC or CNN, there's just the amount of ad space. It kills me and I just give up.
Yeah, yeah, I know what that's like, especially because I put those ads up.
You motherfucker. I don't really use the typical German media outlets, but I would say that they're not the biggest fan of Trump, but it's not like they're saying that he's a devil worshiper or anything. They give pretty fair coverage, I would say, aside from the subliminal thing that I just mentioned.
Sure. As far as how I get my news, I mostly we're on a Discord, like a chat, online chat thing that most people are on, and I get a lot of it like linked news articles. I don't like go and seek out news anymore. It's like provided to me both through Twitter and Discord. So it's like I think that's as much news as I can handle. And I watch local news in the morning and evenings and stuff, just like while I'm doing other things, like sitting on my phone or whatever. But yeah, that's most of my news is from linked articles given to me.
I would respect that, especially since news in general tends to cover the negative events, and it can really, this year especially, it's pretty tough to keep a positive outlook regardless of the events, you know. And
Sure.
Yeah, if you just read one article about kids getting shot in the school somewhere after another, then yeah, it's kind of a bit of a downer.
There's only so many existential threats I can read in one day, you know. You don't handle so much.
Did you see, this is not related to this, but did you see the healthcare professional in one state dressed as a clown for Halloween and reading the COVID death toll?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
It's just the optics are so bad.
They meant that so well, but somehow it's just the most non sequitur freaky thing I've ever seen.
I feel like every day or every week there's like a new thing that is like a perfect example of that we're somehow stuck in this dystopian future. It's just like super boring. It's not like a fun dystopian future where we're like, I don't know, escape from New York or something. It's like we're just all slowly watching it happen on the news.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
So you live in Massachusetts, right?
I do. I live in Massachusetts.
So tell me, Massachusetts. Right. So tell me, what is the political situation like there? Because I don't know much about the Northeast.
So I live on the southern part I live south of Boston, and it's very blue collar. But before I moved here, I would say like, oh yeah, everyone in Massachusetts is like a huge Democrat, socialist person, or whatever, right? Very very left leaning.
Mm-hmm.
And after moving here, I would say that it's much less blue than I thought. There's a lot of, I can say this because I'm Irish, but there's a lot of Irish people here that are just really racist.
Okay.
I think Boston has a history of racism, right? Not really accepting other people, even going as far back as the Italians when they first came to Boston. They were not welcome. Long story short, I think there's a lot more Trump voters here than I think that I anticipated, than I really thought there was going to be.
Do people in Massachusetts do the same thing in North Carolina, where you put a voting sign on your front lawn saying the name of the party you're going to vote for or the candidate?
Yeah, not everyone does, but there are some. And there's the surprising part too is like, I'm sure they do this in North Carolina too, only because of passing judgments, but in Massachusetts too, there's like people who have trucks with like Trump flags and hanging off the tailgate or whatever. Like that's a thing here just as much as it is in North Carolina, Virginia, southern states.
Yeah, we get the stickers and the flag. Yeah, people go around ripping up the lawns of other people that have the certain signs.
Sure.
As one does.
And it's funny too, because like that kind of thing only makes them a martyr, right?
Yeah.
At the very least in their own mind.
Right. And it reinforces the beliefs about how people that think about the other party as good are assholes,
The tolerant left.
Yeah. I was going to ask though, didn't Massachusetts have a healthcare system implemented. I think it was by Romney. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we still have that Romney Care.
So what does it look like?
That I don't know enough about it, but it's basically the early inception of Obamacare or the ACA in Massachusetts. More or less, you're required to have it, and everyone is given it within reason or within. It's in the same scope as the ACA, which is like if you have less than X number of employees, you don't really need to provide it. I don't know. I think it's mostly toothless.
Okay. So I remember that was used as a model for the ACA.
Mm-hmm. It was, yeah. Yeah, and just like the ACA, I think it's been picked at and is mostly worthless. Not worthless, but it's not a sweeping reform
Right.
as it should be.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
In theory, everyone should have access to healthcare, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a conversation of another pod, but I really, the fact that your health is tied to having a job or having, let's not even get into a quote unquote good job, but is completely asinine.
I think it is a good job, right? Because if you get a job at Wendy's or McDonald's, there's not healthcare promised, right?
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's terrible that sort of thing is
So
commonplace.
let's say like a white collar job.
Yeah, right.
That's very sad. I'll just let that sink in for people.
I mean, those. Now we're really going to get into it, but really, those people need the most help, which is this really sad part about it.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many friends that I've known that they say, okay, I've got this health problem that I've had for a long time, but I really have to choose now between if I want to pay my car insurance or go to the doctor. And to me, that's very sad. Could be something preventable too, like let's say you get bit by a spider or whatever, and then you're thinking about going to the doctor,
Sure.
but this doesn't.
Or a bad tooth or whatever.
Yeah, that's probably a better example is a dental problem where it's not going to kill you, but the longer you wait, the worse it's going to get.
Yeah, exactly. So you've already voted, right?
Yes, so North Carolina has a really cool thing, but only available for people that are overseas or military, where you can go online and submit a ballot electronically. So
Welcome to the future.
yeah, this is last time I had to email, and I had to give up my right to secrecy for the vote, right? Because someone had to process it. But I was okay with that. And this time I could do it electronically, and I'm guessing the data is anonymized somehow. And then they get that and then just tally it up. And maybe there's an ID stored somewhere to indicate that I voted. Yeah. So yeah, it was pretty pleasant surprise. I think it's a new program within the last year or two. So that was quite refreshing because my state is 8 million, 9 million people, and you wouldn't expect them to have a system like that in place.
Yeah, there was a big initiative with Massachusetts that basically they sent everyone a mail vote, like a mail-in vote application, sent to everyone one, so then they could say they want to vote in person or not without having to go out of their way. So it's nice to have that option right off the bat.
Yeah, I think in general this election, maybe because COVID or maybe because more interest in the election, but it's got the highest turnout ever, right?
Yeah, both, right? I guess I would say both.
Yeah. North Carolina has 50% of their registered voters already have voted.
How much?
Over 50%.
Yeah, sure.
That's quite.
I saw something about how like some city, I think maybe in Texas, already had more than 90% of last year's.
I bet that's all old people. Sorry. They ain't got nothing better to do.
I may as well mail this in.
You're not taking my Social Security.
What are the politics of people or around where you live, like in Germany?
People where I live in Germany. So where I live is a very big region. It's about 6.5 million people. It's called the Ruhrpott, which is like the Ruhr is a river, and it's like the area around the river. And so it's an area where you can get on a train and you go through a city of 500,000, and then about 10 minutes later you reach another city of 500,000. That goes on for a couple hours. So it's just a bunch of interconnected cities with some small space in between. So it used to be a working class area, like in the 50s, 60s, very 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yep.
Yeah, and then after the war, they got bombed to hell pretty much, and then they rebuilt everything and then started a mining culture, or continued the mining tradition of mining steel and that kind of stuff. But since then, I think all of the mines except one is closed. So the area had to reinvent itself. So they turned into an industrial and technology kind of center. So a lot of companies have their headquarters in the city where I live. A lot of cities built airports so people would come and travel. So long story short, it used to be kind of, let's say, more conservative politically, but I would say it's pretty liberal or centrist. And the chancellor of Germany is Merkel, and she's for the CDU, which is it's like the Christian Democratic Union. And then on the left side, you've got the FDP and the Green. And then on the far right, you probably heard of this party, the AFD. Have you heard an article about them?
Mm-mm.
No, they're basically like the next reincarnation of the. Okay, that's a bit harsh, but I was going to say they're the Nazis, but they're just like a couple steps down from the Nazis, so they're a bit better public image. They're basically immigrants get out.
No armbands this time.
Yeah, no armbands. Yeah, but they're against immigrants, and they're such a bad party that there was a local election where someone won. I think it was, they have two houses of Congress, like a national and a local, and it was like the House of Congress representing the region. There's a lot of coalitions here, and usually it's like the FDP, the left-leaning one, and the Green band together, and then the CDU also band together. But in one area, it was in Thüringen, there was a candidate that had not enough support to get elected in any case. And the AFD, as a joke, put their support behind this candidate, and they got elected. And it was so shameful for the candidate that they had support from the AFD that the person resigned instead of taking office. So that's how bad this party is. That if
My God.
yeah, so they're not really taken seriously. But on the other hand, the national parliament, it is not a two-party or three-party system like the U.S. with Democrats, Republicans, and independents. The party is representative to how many votes they got. So you can have a party having 70% and then a bunch of small parties having 5% or whatever. So they often have
That's interesting.
to form a coalition. So even though they're a minority, they can still influence politics to some degree. About 5 years ago, the Pirate Party had actually a couple seats in the national parliament, which was hilarious because their only thing was really anti-copyright. So that didn't really have much sense. So to answer your question, the area I'm from is pretty centrist or left-leaning. There are a lot of older people that are more conservative, but there's so many more younger people in this area that it kind of balances out more towards the left. And there are certain states in Germany, especially in East Germany, where it is more right-leaning. Usually it pretty much follows the wall. So if it was east of the Berlin Wall, then usually it's going to be more conservative. Or East Germany, rather, because the Berlin Wall is, of course, only in Berlin. But ironically, Berlin itself is pretty liberal because a lot of startups and hippies go to move there. Yeah.
Interesting.
In general, the biggest issue has been immigration. Because of the Syria conflict, Germany took in a bunch of immigrants, and in general, that's a great thing, and I really support it, especially since these people are fleeing from war and disparity and hunger and stuff like that. But the public
Genocide, even.
Yeah, genocide. Yeah, also, yeah, and the public at first was very receptive, but after some bad press from just a couple, bad apples, then they attribute the whole system as being too easy to get a job or too easy to get money, and yeah, so it's kind of the tide has turned against them. So there have been cases of right-leaning people actually setting fire to like their camps, basically. Not like in a bad sense, but they're just tent cities that popped up for refugees to be in until they're processed and given asylum or not. And yeah, a couple of them have been burned down by right-leaning people. So that's the biggest issue in Germany, I would say, is immigration. Hope that wasn't too much of a tangent.
Wild. No, it's really kind of sad, I guess. Your displaced anger would drive you to burn a refugee camp. Like, it's just really sad.
Yeah,
it's not just like, I would say it's really sad for the people who got hurt or their things got destroyed. For someone to be that sort of, lack of a better word, but like brainwashed into thinking that these are the people that have caused all the problems. It's really sort of sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's usually in the East Germany as well. It's East Germany is very poor compared to West Germany, and that's kind of a legacy of communism in a sense. I mean, not to say it's not the only reason, but it's quite a disparity between the two halves of Germany. And I think
Sure.
the immigrants are now the easy target to say, hey, things aren't okay in my city, so it must be these people's fault because they're different. And that's very sad.
Yeah.
We still pay a tax in West Germany called the solidarity tax, and it's like on every paycheck you pay 4% to East Germany, basically. And that's happened since the reunification, so since 91, I
Interesting.
think, or 89.
What does it go to, like social programs?
I don't know what it goes to, but I assume it's everything. So infrastructure, social programs, maybe even paying out unemployment, that kind of stuff. So
Uh,
pretty mixed bag there.
yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
So what would it mean if let's do both sides. What would it mean if Trump were to win again? What would that mean for you and for the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think if Trump won again, I think it would. I keep saying that I don't have any hope, but I think I would really lose hope. And that's not to say that Biden is the Christ the Redeemer, right? I guess I have the naivete of thinking that like we're better than that kind of person, or that how we live or accept people, or what our ideals are, or what our vision of success is, or how we treat people, or the list can go on, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that we should make presidents the example of how to live. That's if we wanted to exemplify Obama, like we would all be drone striking innocents in the Middle East, but that's not really what it is about. The fact that someone so hateful can have a position of power in this country is really sad. Sad.
Yeah, I'll second that with the drone strikes. That's a policy that he I don't think he implemented it, but he definitely ramped up that usage. And I support
Yeah.
him as a president in most issues, but that was one thing that was very disturbing to me, how often drone strikes were being issued. Yeah, and to go back to what you said, it's a complex position. So it's, of course, you can't always be a role model, but I kind of also expect there's a basic set of competencies and not manners, but kind of decorum that applies to the position, especially when dealing with other world leaders, to where you don't provoke them into a nuclear war by calling them Rocket Man or something. That was pretty childish in retrospect, and I'm glad that there wasn't a big mass war started by that.
Yeah, right. It's hard. It's funny too, right? Because it's hard to grasp onto like a good example of what not to do, or how not to act as a president. Just because, only for two reasons. One, the sheer number, right? And two is like because it's not really like a none of these are like perfect examples, right? Calling him a rocket man is one thing, but like he's not wrong, right? He's not wrong in saying that he's like this insane despot. Like, yeah, he's right. But
Totally,
like,
yeah. I think
I don't
if you
know.
know someone's on that big of a hair trigger, you don't provoke them unless you're really looking to start a war. So maybe that was a strategic move on his part and not just buffoonery. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is like after Trump won the first time, it sort of is like a clear indicator to people who want to spread hate or just be an asshole. Like it's okay to be that way.
Did you watch during the first debate when he was asked by the moderator and Biden to condemn white supremacists? Did you see his answer to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, he said stand down. Stand by and stand down is what his answer
Yeah.
was. And he skirted it the whole time.
Evasion, absolutely.
And I get why he did that, which it makes it worse. It's like that's his base.
Yeah,
You can't
alienate your
you
own
can't
base.
say, "Hey, base, go f yourself." Like, you can't. Like, and that in and of itself is so horrible, so horrible.
So let's go to the other end of the spectrum. What does it mean for the U.S. and the world if Biden is elected? Do you see a difference, or
I do, but I'm not, I don't know. I guess nothing is going to change. Like the president will go back to not being on the news every 2 seconds. I guess that would be nice.
Yeah.
It's not a light switch, right? Like I don't remember what the number is, but there's still children in essentially prisons in the US that we don't have mothers or fathers to,
Yeah, I
right?
think it was
Like
700, something like that, where they couldn't match the kids to the families.
great, yeah, 700, that's wonderful. Oh God. So that's a problem. The border in itself is a whole other ball of wax, right? Of like letting people cross or not, and why, and from where, and that's a whole other issue that is never going to be solved. Healthcare is a whole other issue that is never going to be solved. The fact that the court is now far right leaning is never going to be solved.
That's gonna take a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's part of the reason why it's really discouraging. Like some for clarity, my candidate is Bernie Sanders, right? Is that's the person who I wanted to be my candidate. And part of that was I can envision a person like Bernie Sanders pushing much harder for things like universal health care or student debt forgiveness or
Yeah. He was very outspoken and very brazen.
he we for sure the US would not be getting those things. I get it. But to have someone in the pres as a president would push for those type of things, I think is a huge difference between there's a chasm between what is essentially a centrist. He does not lean left, Biden. A centrist saying like, oh, I'm not going to ban fracking. It's just in public spaces. Sure. I have a hard time being excited for the policies of someone that is not as outspoken. Like part of this too is like Bernie Sanders has been fighting for the rights of those struggling the most since his like in the beginning, from the beginning, right? He was arrested and my point is someone who's been fighting for people his entire career versus someone who just hasn't, who's been fighting for them for like the middle his whole career or has been working towards consensus, I think is another. I'm so tired of the right part of this country fighting for whatever the fuck they want and getting whatever the fuck they want. And then the left just conceding the ground and just being like, okay, well, as long as we get somewhere in the middle, it's like the right never concedes. There's no ground. There's no ground that they're losing. We're
Yeah.
only losing ground. The left, right? It's
What
so
would be
frustrating.
the solution to that?
It's so frustrating. I real actual policy change that affects people, right? Obamacare was close. The ACA was close, right? But people still fell through. A lot of people still fell through, right? So actual, real, universal health care that makes a huge sweeping change that affects people in their day-to-day lives. I think in my maybe my maybe in my tiny baby brain, but I think if I think if people got the health care that they needed from I don't know, from a Democrat, let's just say, right? Then they say, okay, well, they actually did something
Right.
for me. And then they can sort of self-evaluate. But I think we're past that, unfortunately. It goes back to like they're not conceding any ground. Like anything like this is the problem. Like even if the right did something great, like the left would never give them the
The credit.
they would never say like you did a good job or that it goes both ways, right? There's something good that the left did that there would never be it would never be reciprocated. There's no like
Right.
it's so divided that it doesn't matter what happens, someone's gonna hate it.
Yeah, the US is a
I
very
don't,
divided country.
I don't know
It's
what
so
I don't know what
divided.
the solution is.
I've always told people that this has never happened, but if the U.S. split into different countries, let's say not necessarily North and South, but countries based on their interests. For example, the West Coast would be
Hmm.
on one wavelength versus the Southeast would be on a different wavelength. I think the farmers in the Midwest have their own interests, and it's so hard to put 300 plus million people together and try to steer the country in the right direction, especially if you factor in lobbyists.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a couple of papers. I know there's at least one. I can't remember the year it was, but there's a Russian guy who said like, yeah, the U.S. is going to break up into 5 different countries or something, and he like laid it out, and he had like this long explanation about it. I can't remember what it was. I can find it, and I'll pull the link and put it in the description. But yeah, to your point, is like there is no consensus, and a part of me who, as someone who's lived in the Midwest and then the Northeast, is like the South. There's no way they could live on their own.
Why is that?
They don't contribute enough to GDP. Like they don't make enough stuff. They don't create enough wealth. They would be impoverished.
Well, in a lot of cases, they already
They would
are.
Exactly right. So if they were their own country, then they'd be even worse.
I'm just saying, if South America can do it, then or countries in South America, if they can do it, then I'm pretty sure the Southeast, if it was, let's say 5 states, 6 states, I'm sure they could form some sort of economic union and then negotiate their own trade agreements to where they have some sort of GDP. But I know what you mean. There's not much. You're looking at manufacturing base and tech hubs and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. They just don't create enough wealth. I mean, this is part of the problem with like slavery, right? Is like they could only be successful if they were enslaving a group of people. What does that tell you about like? And they have never recovered.
Yeah, the innovation didn't really happen. The cotton gin, right, by Eli
Right.
Whitney. But yeah, if you have people doing all the work for you, there's not much incentive to innovate, right?
And I'm not saying like, oh yeah, California and New York are like the great bastions of hope, and they will bring us into the future. Like that's not true.
Yeah, there are racist jerks
One.
everywhere.
Right. So
Let's get back on track. So it's the election. So we made we talked about what would mean if a certain candidate would win. I think the only thing that I could contribute to that conversation is that if Biden does win, I would like to see a really strong public policy for wearing a mask and trying to prevent the epidemic in general, just because Trump has really failed in that regard to be a role model, first of all, wearing a mask. He just started doing that recently.
barely, but yeah.
Yeah, and he takes it off whenever possible. And also telling people, hey, it's not okay to protest in large groups without masks. You need to, even if you don't believe in it, just humor us for 6 months and then I'll give you some money. Something like that. Jesus Christ, it's awful. 900,000 infections, I think, was what I read.
Man, we could do a whole other episode on like the failings of the Trump administration as far as the pandemic.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's again, it's like the people that it's gonna affect are the poor and the uneducated,
Yeah.
right? They're the ones that are going to be directly affected by all of this.
People that don't have to work in an office, they're in a much better situation. Like we have being fortunate enough to work at home, right? So.
Yeah, and oh, man, I think about that all the time. It's like I have a single mother who worked in retail growing up, and so I just think I'm not sure what she would do. Right, is between her, so my mother was constantly working when I was growing up. So if there was a pandemic like there is now, and 3 of us at home who had to do school online, there's no way.
It'd be really tough for her, yeah.
She couldn't afford the daycare in order for someone to sit there with us. I think I have too much empathy or something, because I kind of feel bad for the people who like don't want to wear a mask. Like they've clearly been lied to, and so I don't know. It just feels like they have been failed.
I guess that's the education system or their families or however they were informed. But I have no sympathy for those people. They can ease. I won't say that, but let's just say that if they get sick, then it's their own damn fault.
Yeah, but like them getting sick could affect me.
This is the great argument of the Republicans: is why should I have insurance? And then you ask them, okay, well, what about car insurance? Doesn't everyone have to have car insurance? Well, yeah, that's different because if someone hits you, then yeah, they're going to cause damage. It's like, okay, well, you can also get infected by a person with COVID if you don't have health insurance. Oh, that's completely different.
Right. It's like, I don't know, man.
Boom, mic drop. Walk away from them.
Yeah. Oh,
I just wanted to go back to one topic that you talked about at the beginning, or we both talked about rather, with the prediction. Did you change your prediction during the course of this discussion?
no. I mean, I really think it's gonna be a real problem. I'm not trying to be a
Supreme Court
there and instill fear, but I think getting comfortable is something that we learned from in 2016. I mean, you cannot use the numbers anymore. And I'm praying. I really am. I'm hoping for something like a blue wave, quote unquote, which would be, would feel really great. But I am not holding my breath. No way.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Where even though the numbers predicted a certain way, there can be
Totally.
surprises, right?
Totally.
I'm gonna stand by my prediction. I think I said 296,242, something like that.
All right. We're gonna put it on the big board and see what you end up with. See how much extra credit you'll get.
There's no way I'm gonna get it right, but if I do, feel free to give me extra credit. Well, I think it's a good point to wrap up then. So as always, very sorry you had to listen to this.
So sorry.
And thanks a lot for listening. Yep. Farewell.
Yeah. Thanks.